Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the Wisdom of the World show, where we bring you wisdom from the world's leading minds, hearts, and souls. My name's Jack Butler, and I'm the host of the Wisdom of the World show, and I'm excited today to have a really cool guest. I think you're going to like him, Tripp Lanier. He's a men's coach and host of the New Man podcast, where he's had some really great luminaries on his show, including Ken Wilber, Tim Ferriss, Leo Babauta, and Marcus Buckingham. Tripp, great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm curious of the Tripp Lanier backstory. How did you get to be a men's coach? What was your journey? What were the significant events that took you to this line of inquiry?
I started out. I had a previous life. I owned a video production company for a total of 12 years. And I started it right after college. I think I was 22 years old. And I got to have my midlife crisis pretty early on in my late 20s. And I think in my around 30 or so, I was like, is this really what I wanted to do? I just kind of went with it and that kind of thing. But I was going through some stuff at the time, emotionally just really growing and going through this transition. And I was like, well, what the hell am I doing? I can see where, what making more money would bring me. I could see where doing this or that would bring me. But it's like, what's the thing that really matters most to me? And I saw that path of comfort and somewhat certainty, like what I already knew. And then there was this unknown and this place of what I really, kind of that unfolding. What do I really want? And what do I want to create? And just, it was really much more juicy to me. And so just slowly, day by day, doing more and more of that. But I think I just had a natural. I was the guy that usually, if a buddy was going through something, he called me. I wasn't trained at the time, so I think I just naturally had a coaching, supportive ability. Yeah, and it was just like, oh, you can actually be a coach. They call it coaching because I didn't want to be a therapist, but it was like, oh, well, that sounds pretty cool. And so. Doing various trainings and that kind of stuff, and then it just finally landed. All this stuff's been, I can look back in the rearview mirror and see how it all lined up, but I mean, it was just fumbling left and right. Like, there was no big, huge, grand vision of how it was all supposed to work out. Some things have been designed in my life, but for the longest time, I just really didn't have a clue how it was going to all turn out.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you've
been
learning forward. It sounds like. So
like
who were the influences on you during that journey, or maybe still even?
I would say during that period when I really started to first open my eyes to this other world and this other reality, and Ken Wilber was huge to me. Yeah. And I think for me, this was my own pathology. I thought, well, if I got really smart and I knew a lot of stuff, then I wouldn't suffer, which is not true. And so I even though the integral perspective was really helpful in helping me understand stuff, it actually didn't help me not feel less pain. Does that make sense? So there was this kind of applied part of kind of getting down in the muck after that, and I think David Data was one of the first guys that really showed me something. And I met him through the integral crowd and that kind of stuff, and then it all just seemed to kind of flourish from then on. Whether it was Zen teachers like Ginpo Roshi or Junpo Roshi, just so many people have been along the path, and not just there's been these teachers, but I think really I learned more from being in men's groups, being with friends, and going through stuff together and watching what worked and what didn't. Because I think in our age there's a big disconnect, or I personally don't feel served when I put somebody up on a pedestal. It's like, oh, this guy's a teacher or whatever. I think I've just learned more from going through stuff with other people and going through stuff and being supported by others. That's really been what's most helpful for me. To be honest, it's great to have those teachers and their books, but getting down in it and learning on my own has been the best.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they say, life's the teacher, I guess. So you kind of get the experiences you need. So when you're putting together your New Man podcast now, what sort of person do you look to engage on that?
Well, it really helps that I'm a men's coach. So, a good part of my life is spent down in the trenches working with guys and hearing the challenges that they're up against. And I'm there helping them, along the way. And so I just get a beat on like, wow, this is a recurring theme for guys. It's not just for them, but for me as well in my own life as my own role as a man, but also as a husband and as a father and a business person and whatever. And so it's just weird how they just kind of show up. It's like, oh, you know what? It'd be really helpful to have a person that knew this or could help us with that. And so that's how my curiosity goes is who could help us with this or that. But we're at the stage now where lots of stuff comes. People are contacting me to be on the show, and so I'm usually surprised, like, wow, that would be really cool to talk to that person about this and that. So it's a mixture of both. But I like the shows where I have a beat on something I know is really going to help people, and trying to find the best person that can help them. It's exciting.
So what are your current working surfaces? What are the current things that you're like, wow, this is a challenge I have, or this is something I'm really working on or integrating, or even something you haven't figured out that you just feel like you're knocking up against?
Yeah, well, it's been, being a father has been humbling, but it's also been really exciting. To me, it's just everything in my life is supporting my ability to be present and have fun with my family, but also with myself. And so it's navigating that territory of, what is it that I need? What's going to strengthen me? What's going to feel good for me? And also not come at the cost of other things that I really value, whether it's my business or my marriage or my friendships or obviously my daughter. And so I would say that's it's this constant push-pull of feeling this like, oh, I'm a little out of balance here today, I'm a little out of balance there, what's going to serve me here, what's going to serve me there? Because the default is to just be grumpy and just be like, oh, man, this isn't working, that's not working. And instead of like, what is it that I need? What's going to really feed me? And get into that position of that and start making requests like, hey, here's what would really serve me. What about you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So would your experience of that be that's really one of these dynamic things that you're not going to just suddenly be like, oh, I've landed the solution. This is how I organize, wife, daughter, business, and all these other aspects of my life. It's more, week to week, month to month, knowing what you've
day to day.
Yeah, day to day.
Moment to moment. Yeah, it really is. And I think the real suffering comes when guys think that there's some utopia, that there's going to be this exoneration from that conversation, that somehow it's just going to be over and I won't have to worry about this, I won't have to stay engaged, I could just bloop and drift off, and that'll happen when you're dead. But we really have to be paying attention, and not just to what's going on around us, but more importantly, what is it? Okay, so given that this is going on, what do I want? How do I want to respond?
Yeah. So I know that one of your strap lines is beyond the new age wimp and the macho jerk. I just want to dig into that a little bit. Is your experience that one has to kind of grow through both of those things before there can be some kind of integration? And if so, does being a macho jerk necessarily precede being a new age wimp? Because integral theory would kind of suggest that it might, but I'm curious what your lived experience of that is.
I think you're right. I mean, in my development, there was the macho jerk, and then there was my new age wimp period, and then I think I just kind of settled back on macho jerk.
Oh, nice, like that. That's good.
Yeah, like, oh, that's okay. All right, yeah. I don't. I don't even know if you're, but I don't know if we have to, I think we do have to grow through them. I think we do. And I think we have to have a taste of, this is, okay, here's one solution. Basically, being one of those is one solution or one strategy or one coping mechanism for getting what we want in the world. Yes. So we can do it in a domineering way, but it's still a fear-based response. Or we can do it through the collapsed way, which I'm loosely using as the new age wimp. Nobody wants to be either of these guys, which is nice to put out there. And I don't get any new age wimps that are like, I'm a new age wimp. Don't say that. It's like, nobody wants to be the new age wimp. Or the macho jerk that gets his feelings hurt. I don't hear that. I don't hear from him either. So, neither of us want to do it, but those are the two coping mechanisms that I think, by and large, we see in our culture. And so neither of us wants to do that, but I think we've got to go through it first. Like, well, this doesn't work. Let me try this. Okay, that doesn't work either. So now what? And I think that's the big question that most of the people that I coach or that are showing up to listen to the podcast or in that place, like, okay, now what? I've seen my father do this. I've seen my grandfather do that. I've seen my brothers and that kind of stuff do this kind of stuff. But I don't see where's the path? What's really going to be that integration, as you said?
Yes. And do you find between those two, is there any one that is more common for people to show up if they want to work with you? Do you get more new age wimps than macho?
I don't think it's black and white. I think that most of us have a tendency to be one or the other. Dr. Robert Glover wrote a great book called No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yes.
And he talks a lot about the nice guy syndrome, and it's easy to throw in the new age wimp into that. Even if you haven't been playing with crystals and yoga and stuff, we still have this nice guy syndrome. And once we learn what that nice guy syndrome, you start to see it everywhere, even in the macho jerk guys. So I think it's just a spectrum of a fear-based response, or it's a spectrum of this coping mechanism that we've learned. And we may be more of the collapsed guy with this person or this woman in our life, and we may be more of the domineering guy. I know guys that are the domineering ass kickers at work, and then when they get home, they just collapse in their family. So it's not one or the other. It's just, where's the adapter? How do we plug in with this situation? Yes.
Yeah. Osho used to talk about the guys who would expend all their energies at work, come home, and then if they had in a relationship with someone who would stay at home, they'd be using up all their kind of it was a male-female relationship, using that female energy up during the day, and then come the evening they'd want someone to kind of like ruckus with and henpick, and you kind of get this like role reversal that happens outside of the workplace. We're going to come on to relationship stuff in a minute. I want to just stick on men at the moment. I want to talk to you about mission, because I know people often talk about, I want to find my mission in the world. Yes. What's your understanding of mission? Is there one mission? Is there something that you were specifically put on this earth to do? Do you think it's more of an unfolding in time? This suits my purpose, and then something else comes around. Layers of the onion is often a metaphor used. Where do you sit?
I think it's the latter. I think you described it well. And I deal with a lot of guys that are really confused after they read David Data, and they're like, okay, oh my God, I was pretty okay before, but now that I realize I don't have a mission, I'm really screwed up.
Yeah.
And we're going to work with that guy, help him out. But I went through that too, and I think this is one of the traps that I see, is that when we attach our well-being, or we attach our identity onto this thing, and it's a mission, or before it could have been a certain amount of money, or having that girlfriend, or that title, or that car, or whatever. But the mission is just another thing to attach our well-being and sense of identity onto. And you just have to remember that the mission is there to serve us. It's there to serve our ability to experience what we really want in our lifetime, which I've found to be a sense of peace, a sense of passion, a sense of love, connection, and freedom. So at any given point, we're wanting, a mixture of those great ingredients, even if it's after accomplishing something, or it's being recognized, or whatever. There's something in there that those are kind of these core experiences that we're wanting. And so the mission can be in service of this egoic identity thing. Oh, I want to be this guy, and I've got to therefore follow this mission in order to do that.
Right.
But if we make it more intrinsic and we follow our values a bit more, then I think that the mission can be malleable. Basically, the mission is the pathway up the mountain, so to speak. And I'm not crazy about using summits and finish lines and all that kind of stuff as a metaphor, but there's lots of different ways to get there. There's lots of different ways for us to experience those intrinsic, wonderful experiences in our life. And so you just have to ask, is the mission in service of that? And if it's not, then you let it go. And then the next kind of thing shows up.
Yeah. So that's great. So where do you sit on this question of, what do I want in the world versus what does the world want from me? Because you've been languaging a lot in the sense of helping guys know what is it they really want. Do you see that as something that really comes from inside, and what you really want? Do you see that that's necessarily aligned with collectively or socially what's the highest good?
I think they're one and the same.
You do?
I do, because I think when we're taking care of ourselves and we're taking responsibility for ourselves, we're less likely to be an asshole. We're less likely to be domineering. We're less likely to be manipulative. We're less likely to be toxic. we're doing the things that we love, and that's when life starts to generate. It starts to have this spirit of play and the spirit of service. So, to me, like, take care of yourself. Go take care of your own shit. Go take care of what really matters to you, and get your stuff lined up. And because from that place, you're here to contribute. You've actually got something to offer, versus, okay, what can I get from this person and what can I get from them? Because it still feels like a sticky trap to me. So I don't think about it too much, and maybe I'm misunderstanding your question a lot, but I think that it really does come down to when we take care of ourselves, that's kind of the greatest good that we can give to the world.
So it's kind of like fill your cup up and then kind of let that overflow in abundance. And
yeah, that's the idea. That's the ideal. And then of course there's the challenges of life itself. But I deal with that with guys that have the sense of duty to their families and to their children, and I completely agree. I totally get it. And we've got to think about the role that we play. What do we want to model for the people in our lives? That we're martyrs, that we're victims, or do we want to model strength and that we're pursuing our highest good, as you said, or the things that really light us up and bring true joy in our lives? To me, that's preferable.
Yeah, I'm with you. So you've mentioned David Data. I just thought I'd just ask you if there's anything, where do you sit vis-a-vis his teaching? Are there the core tenets of that fairly similar to what you subscribe to, or are there other things that you feel you particularly moved away from that line of thinking?
It's been a long time since I've really read any of his stuff. It's probably been close to 10 years or so. I can't even really think about, I couldn't even pick a few things out. I remember he was really good at bringing out the sense of polarities. I think that's been helpful. I think it's helpful. I think his work in, Way of the Superior Man, there's some great stuff in there. And it's just like anything else. You can't turn it into dogma, and you can't turn it into, here's the path. But I did feel like his work was very helpful. And after a certain point, it was like I moved on, some other things. But yeah. Very, very grateful for his work, though. Yeah.
Cool. Got it. How do you balance staying present with taking massive action? Because it seems to me that oftentimes there are people who are very good at the internal stuff, so they can cultivate high spiritual states, or they can connect in with a sort of bigger sense of identity. But how do you actually bring that into the world and be effective or badass, kick-ass, the person that can kind of like make stuff happen? Because I don't know about you, but I often find that people tend to gravitate more towards one or other of those. And I guess I feel in my work is about how can we bring an intersection of those things, because you want people who are at their most conscious doing the best work they can in the world.
Yeah, to me that this is where I think the polarity comes in, and it's not about masculine, feminine so much, but it is about receiving and kind of putting out there, creating.
Yeah.
And I think they go hand in hand. And I think for the individual, there's going to be a bias towards a certain balance there, whatever that is for them. It may not be 50-50.
Yes.
But that said, I agree. I spent a lot of times with people in Boulder when I lived in Boulder, and working for them was hanging out in a coffee shop talking. No, like that was
not even a MacBook Pro. Oh my god!
It was just talking, like that was the work, and it was interesting. I was like, oh, okay, that was work, and a lot. I coach, I talk on the phone, so I can appreciate that. But that would be enough for certain folks. You know this person I'm talking about?
I met a few of them, perhaps.
And then there's then meeting some others, which is like you walk in and there's the whiteboards, and this is getting done this week and getting done today, and these big to-do lists and stuff. So, yes. And they're knocking it out, and that's inspiring too. But I think this is where we come back to where do we find on a personal level the most satisfaction? Mm-hmm. Because there's a real dynamic tension there. As David Emerald would say, between where we are and what we want to create in the world. And for some people, they can hang that out there and it's okay. And for others, that dynamic tension is too painful. We have to do something about it. We have to be creating. Okay, what am I going to do today?
Yes. What
am I going to get done this week? And that's where we find that joy, is when we've inched our way closer to that. And for me, I'm one of those people. I'm happiest when I'm creating. Lots of stuff can be going to shit in the world, but if I'm listening to that voice and I'm just getting out of the way and letting it through me,
Yep.
then I'm good. I feel so much better. But we've got to get to know that part of ourselves, and then by putting stuff out there and by we get into a vulnerable position. I think that's what we're avoiding by actually taking action. Is we don't know what's going to happen, and it may be a waste of time. We can be criticized, whatever it may be, and we're avoiding that.
Yes.
I think this is where Stephen Pressfield's work comes into play really well. It's like the War of Art and dealing with that. But that's where the real ass kicker stuff comes in. It's like, okay, great. You've been able to receive. That's a big part of it. You've been getting this download, and now what wants to emerge is that what wants to come through you or as you. I love that process, the creative process. Whether you're making music or you're creating a business or whatever, it's like get the hell out of the way and fully commit to what it is that you're going to do, and then inspiring shit really happens. So does that answer your question?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned the talking coffee shops of Boulder. I mean, obviously, one of the things they're talking about is where is Tripp Lanier? How come he left? He left the 300 plus days of sunshine of Colorado in favor of something else. So, where are you now, and why did you move?
I'm in Florida, and I live close to the water. I'm a tropical guy. I'm a tropical water person. The water is where I am rejuvenated. So. Boulder was a fantastic place, and it was really hard to leave Boulder. But Boulder never felt like home. I wish I could take Boulder and bring it to the water. Then it'd be great. That was my only concern. But I found a hard time. Like when I would leave Boulder and I would go to Hawaii, or I would go to certain parts of the world where I could go surf.
Yes. You find it hard to come back.
It was like suddenly like finally getting oxygen, literally, and also. But I just felt rejuvenated. Like my creative forces came online, and I couldn't ignore that anymore. Yes. That if I really wanted to have the wind at my back, if I wanted to be swimming with the current, I needed to be in a place that really supported me. And so Boulder was definitely I actually felt like Boulder was trying to kill me when I was there. I had nosebleeds and my skin was falling off.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was just hard for me. So I
hear you. Well, good.
Love Boulder.
Good on you for following on your impulse of what you need. So, how do you take advantage of the water these days?
I spend a lot of time where I live. I prefer to surf, but where I live, we don't get too many surfing days per month. So, but I spend a lot of time on my stand-up paddleboard, and I've got a few of those, and so just cruising around, and I get a great workout, and I can go out and just be like, oh, I just want to work it out, and I want to yell and scream out in the water. It's a great place to be private. It's a great place to unplug and go be around nobody. And then there's just times where I'm cruising around, and there's just so much wildlife where we live. I mean, sharks and rays and fish, and go out at sunset, and the water looks like it's boiling around me. No one's around, and it's just so teeming with life. And those are
hard, man.
Yeah, it fuels me. Feels great.
So you've alluded to these various roles you have: business person. Obviously you're a coach and podcast man. Husband, father. I just want to dig in a little bit. Like, how do you set your life up? How do you go about managing all those priorities, giving them the attention they need, whilst also getting out on your paddleboard and doing the kind of fun, free things that seems you enjoy a lot as well?
I think the key word here is design. I just had a cool interview with someone on Friday, and we were talking about this idea of designing our lives versus planning them. Because I don't know about you, my plans go to shit. Like, just something always interrupts the plan.
Yep.
But when we design our lives, or when I design my life, I know that it's like, okay, I don't know where I'm going to live, but I know I want to be able to have this kind of cost of living. I know I want to have this kind of food. I want to be able to live this close to the water. I don't want to deal with a lot of traffic. You start to lay out the functionality of life.
Uh-huh.
And then we start to open the door. Okay, so where is this possible? Same thing with my business. Okay, I only want to work 3 days a week. I want to be able to create. I want to be able to work whenever I want. I want to be able to work wherever I want. Okay, how does that intersect with my gifts that I like doing? Like, where does that happen? It's taken years to do that. It was a really tough conversation, but it was always about coming back to the design or the function that my the work that I do was there to support the lifestyle that I wanted. And the lifestyle was there to support the family life and what I wanted to create. And so, but I don't think a lot of us are doing that. We followed the plan like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? And we're looking around, okay, my neighbors are doing this, or, I go to this school and then I get this job and then I get married and then we have the kid. And there's this kind of standard plan.
About 60, yeah.
Right, and then you melt down. So the the idea is that, we have to ditch the plan and then look at the function, the design that we want to create in our life. And I think that's been the revelation for me. That's what I've done my whole life. I started that first company so it could support me, and I love doing the work. I love being a video editor and a video producer, but I really wanted to be around to be able to play music whenever I wanted and to be able to travel, and that was the function for me.
Yes.
So, but I think many of us have not been taught that. We've been taught how to follow orders or to follow a plan, and we're not standing back and saying, okay, what's the function of this and this and that in my life? What is it that I want to have it serving?
Yes.
So
it sounds like your attention's less on, what am I going to put in my day planner this week? It's almost at a kind of higher order of what is it that I really want in my life, and how am I setting my life up so that those things they're just there for me. You can talk about wanting water in your life, but if you're not willing to go and kind of move to it, then I guess it's never going to show up as strongly.
Yeah,
but
I think that's where we come back to that other conversation where it's a nice conversation to have. Like, oh yeah, I'd like to have water in my life, and this would really serve me. But then it's okay. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are the things that are going to happen this week that are going to bring you closer to that? So, you got to that other part of like, okay, now what are we going to do? You put it in gear and you go do it. But I do sit down and say, okay, am I going to paddle today, or am I going to, just work? Is it going to serve me more? What's going to serve me more? Writing, creating something, or going for a paddle? Because I also want to spend a certain amount of time with my daughter and my wife. So it's not about doing it all. There are these things. And then days it's like, it's time to crank. I've got 6 clients today. That's the focus. So I hope that answers your question.
So does that mean you're more of a kind of, what do I want to do today kind of guy, rather than like, let's lay out the next week or two? And
I'm pretty good at laying out the next week or two. It gets real fuzzy in the next few months or something like that. Let's talk about what's going on this week or what's going on next week. And but I really couldn't tell you. It's more of a challenge for me, and I think this probably hurts my work. What I can put out. But if I were to set hard deadlines, okay, by April, whatever, I'm going to have this thing created. I'd probably be more successful at doing that kind of stuff.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for the insight into how you rock and roll. So what's currently inspiring you in your work? What things are you feel like you're really learning, or are there any particular resources, people, books, or things that particularly have your attention at the moment?
It's usually just wherever the focus has been lately. So I got to interview Laird Hamilton recently. That was a lot of fun, and that was a big deal for me as a surfer and somebody that's been on the water my whole life.
Cool,
that was inspiring. And then, but I'd have to say that more and more, just helping guys. I've been really thankful for David Emerald's work, and his Power of TED book has been out for a while. But it's basically about the drama triangle, and and then how to become a creator and that kind of thing. And to me, like, just putting that out there and giving guys that framework has been so helpful.
The drama triangle.
The drama triangle, and also that, but then just helping them push themselves into what do I want? What do I want to create? What do I want to design? And having those types of conversations instead of just let me hear why things aren't going well.
Right.
And so that's been really cool. And then it is just, I think at the focus of so much of what I do is just helping guys figure out what they want. I mean, there's so many different tools, but at the end of the day, it really is coming down to, what do you want? Okay, given that the weather is this way, or the government is this way, or your girlfriend or your wife or kid is that way, what do you want? I mean, so much of that's 80% of it. And then it's like, okay, then what are we going to do this week, next week, and get it into gear? So, I mean, it's just about finding new, fun, fresh ways for me to have that conversation. But that's in and of itself, that's really what it is.
Yeah. I get it. It's a big conversation. So let's move on a little bit to relationship. Is that all right? I just wanted to ask you a few questions about that. one of the I know we've mentioned him a couple of times. One of the data perspectives I know that people have found controversial. So he talks about this notion, that really for a guy your mission that's the most important thing, and if you don't want to compromise that for other things. So if it got to the stage where you only had half an hour of quality time for your partner, but you were really pursuing your mission in the way that you wanted, and then you were bringing your full presence to your partner as opposed to this sort of like divided attention or some kind of nag that you wish you were doing something else, that's actually a better way of doing things. What's your take on that? What's your take on how much time for mission and how much time for relationship?
I don't know if even that's the way to put it, because I think that one day it'll be one way and one day it'll be it'll be different. So like I said, it's not about having your schedule all locked in and, well, I've got 3 hours for a relationship and 2.5 hours for this or that. But at the core of that conversation, I think, is true that if we are dismissing our own deepest values, and by doing that means chucking our mission aside. I don't even use the word mission, but if we're just basically chucking our desires and the thing that we really care about most and the thing we want to create in the life. By dismissing that, now we've set up, now we've just put some Chinese food in the fridge to start to get funky. Like, just go ahead and put it in the bottom crisper there, and it's just going to start to stink real bad, okay? Because no matter how great the relationship is, it's never a replacement for the work that you want to create and build out in the world. Now, the work that you create and build out in the world can be in service of that, and your relationship can be in service of the mission. Mm-hmm. And that's the ideal. That's what I try to help guys. Like, okay, so how do you set your life up so they're supporting
mutually
one another?
Supportive. Got it. Yeah.
That would be the ideal. But and then the second part of that is that I do believe that quality is much better than quantity. I can sit with my wife, we can watch a movie and not connect at all. Mm-hmm. Or we can really drop in and talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's a completely different thing. Same thing with my daughter. She's not even some personal development expert or anything like that. But
what do you mean? Not yet?
No, but seriously, if I am just completely present with her,
yes,
it's sunlight, and she just flowers. So that's just a given. Like in anything, like why, if you're gonna do it, be present.
Yeah.
Don't. And if you're sitting there and you're doing it, and I'm guilty of this too, like on the phone, and like she's over here doing like that, just go do the thing you really want to do in that time. Either do one or the other. But I think where we have the most suffering is when we're trying to have one foot in two boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about this mutually supportive, mission and relationship and setting it up that way, do you have any top tips or pointers or strategies that really help people achieve that? Because I guess most people listening would think, I want to pursue my desires, my mission, want to have a great relationship, and I want them to get on. How do you do that?
I think you've got to be vocal. You've got to be really clear that this is what matters most to you. And that's scary. That's a really scary conversation, especially if you've been dating someone. Like a lot of guys that I talk to, they're not starting out on that foot. They're coming to me after they've been in a relationship for 5-10 years, and they're like, okay, we start off in this context, like we met at this thing and that, like and then I knocked her up and we got married. There's a lot of that. Like it was never part of the dream, and it wasn't part of the plan. But here, nonetheless, here we are.
Here's life. Yeah.
Here's life, and so there's this MO, that there's this pattern that's already been set up, that this is what the relationship is, this is how it works, this is the routine, and so they've got to go back in and say, look, this is where I am now. This is what I'm trying to create in my life. And what about you? How I want to hear what's going on for you, and how can we support one another in that? Because when I'm doing my thing and I'm creating or whatever, even if just I'm go-kart racing, it doesn't have to be profound.
Yes.
But when I'm doing the things that really light me up, I'm going to be better in this relationship.
For you.
It's gonna be better for both of us. So, but many of us are in that duty mindset of like, no, I have to. This is for the marriage, and this is for the blah blah blah. It's very kind of puritanical Quaker kind of thing. But we're not in that place anymore. We can live in a way where we can be mutually supportive of one another, and we don't have to be joined at the hip. So whether that means we see each other in a few minutes a day or a few minutes a month or whatever, it's about finding what works best for both. But it's a brave conversation. It's a daring conversation for people to have, because it's going to upset the status quo. It's going to upset your comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah. It sounds like part of that is up leveling the perspective or frame that you bring to a relationship, so that you're not living into this kind of duality, like, oh, if I want to really pursue my work, I've got to do that to the detriment of my relationship, and having both of you really focus on this kind of win-win, where we're all winning from what's going on.
Many of us have turned the relationship into the finish line. That, okay, once I get the girl and once we're there, then it's kind of done. And, you know, our culture is all about that with the romantic comedies and all that kind of stuff.
Get a rock on the finger.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, then that was it. Now it's done, and then we're doing what our parents did.
Oh, wow.
And so we do have to wake up and say, is this what I really want? And for some, great. Like that's gonna be fine. But for a lot of us that are out there and just like, man, what the hell?
Yeah.
And we can't just look at our friends that are not very happy either and think that, okay, well, this is all there is. And I think that's, you know, what's beyond this, what's possible. Get into that conversation.
How do you help guys be emotionally accessible? I think that's one of the common things that women say about their guy, maybe particularly if he's a bit more on the macho jerk side of things. Yeah, what's if that's like not native territory? You know, I don't know. Maybe for you, I sense that is quite a native territory. But if a guy's looking at this and thinking, yeah, I want to be able to drop in Tripp. I want to be able to connect for these 5-10 minute gold moments. Like, what's that all about, buddy? How do I do that?
He's not gonna. Rarely does he come to me and say, yeah, I want to drop in. But what he does say is, my life is feeling flat. I'm not excited about anything. I'm not that fired up about stuff. Like, even if it's pornography, even if it's things that, you know, it's just flying along. And so that's a great context now to say, okay, let's go into this part of your life. Let's actually start to, you know, let's take the mute button off of your emotional world, because a lot of them have either muted it or they've turned it way down, because there's stuff they don't want to hear going on. There's a fucking phone going off all the time.
Yeah.
They're not picking it up, and the phone's usually saying, I don't like my life, and I don't like my wife, and I don't like this or that. There's things that they basically don't know how to handle, and so they've turned off whatever signals are coming in. But that's at the cost of the things that also excite them and energize them. All of this is in that emotional realm of their life. So I just say, why don't we focus on you starting to get the signals for what do excite you, and then from then I get them to really start to pay attention. You know, was it more this way or was it more that way? Was it more exciting for you or was it more peaceful for you? Oh, you know, they start to be able to discern things in a very broad sense. But like anybody, if you're learning how to cook or anything, you start to discern different flavors.
Yes.
And the more that they become aware of it, the more they're present they are. Then they come to me and they're like, hey, you know what? I did this the other day, and it was like, it felt more this way than that way. It's like, okay, cool. And I thought I'd be scared, but I was actually more excited. Okay, great. So they're starting to learn and discern the difference between that versus, I don't want that, and, you know, I do want this. So like, and so I think once they start having that discernment, they start to realize that, you know, passion, a lot of guys talk to me, I want to feel passionate, I want to feel fired up, I want to feel lit up. That's this kind of big thing in their life. Yeah. And, you know, if we talk about it, what passion is, like Joseph Campbell talks about in the sense of like, this is where we feel most alive. We want to feel really alive in our lives. Well, we don't feel really alive unless there's some part of us that's at risk of dying. Even just in a social, like in a literal risk, but there's some risk being taken. And so I tell them, great, if things are flat, then the whole world's available to you. All we got to do is just start taking some risks here. What? You know, they don't. Well, I want to feel passion, but I don't want to actually take risk.
Put anything at stake.
Right. I don't want any skin in the game.
Yes.
And so, but that's the path. Is we just start to find where can you start to put a little bit of skin in the game, and then, you know, it's actually quite quick where we start to open some things up, and they get the experiences that they're looking for. But then that dovetails into the relationship stuff where they're showing up more excited, they're more lit up, they're more full.
Yes.
Women respond to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like you're either on a sort of upward momentum, you know, with one area of your life reinforcing the other, or it's on a kind of descending spiral or flat line where neither's really serving the other, you know?
Right.
Where do you stand on flirting? I'm
a huge flirt.
Cool, man.
I'm pro flirt.
Pro flirt. You're part of the pro flirt petition. Well, I just say that because there's some relationship teachers would say, you need to be really careful where you're putting your sexual energy, and the exchanging that sexual energy, not just physically, but in that sort of frisson of sexual chemistry, that's something you to some extent you should reserve for your partner. At the same time, that frisson, that excitement, that spark is also a hugely fun, creative, exploratory, risk-taking, charismatic energy. So I just wondered if you had any kind of guidance or prescription for the men that you work with, how to balance playing with their sexual energy.
The key word here is if, and I think what we're talking about here is am I pro-flirt if the guy's in a relationship? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure that that's what we're talking about. So,
and you were in a relationship last time I looked.
I think I still am. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
So I think the key word here is that it really comes down to connection. Yep. And so if we had a gauge on the dashboard that's a connection, disconnect, connection. So the more connected that we are, the more we feel it. You can feel it. You can feel when you're more connected to your partner, even if you're not together. I know, did we leave things on a good foot? Did I actually look her in the eye? And whatever it is, it doesn't have to be this routine thing. Okay, when I kiss her and I say this and I do that, okay, that's the routine. Because usually that's not creating connection.
Yeah, it goes flat.
But if we learn how to create connection, and that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. But then there's so many things that are open, because then the trust is there. Then she knows that this connection is here, and I know that the connection is there with her. Mm-hmm. So from that strong foundation, any kind of flirting that goes on, I'm going to feel a lot more confident and secure with that kind of stuff. But if we're not connected and there's flirting going on, it can be it can hurt. It can really hurt a lot. And so it's just a matter of, if you talk about sexual energy, there's a spectrum here of flirting, right? There's being playful, and then there's like flat out, like really going after somebody.
Yeah.
But I think I'm talking more about like the playful stuff. But even if that energy is being taken away from the relationship instead of focused on the relationship, there's something to be discussed there. And so, but it really, focus on the connection first, and then a lot of doors open in terms of freedom and what's possible from that place. If there's not connection, then any little thing is going to be
perceived as a threat.
It's going to be a threat.
Yeah.
Correct.
Cool, man. What about rest? There's some people like John Gray that say the key dynamic of masculine energy is action and rest, and it's really important to have those down times. He would joke and say when guys are like lazing out in front of the TV, like there's actually something a bit more profound going on there sometimes, and it's important not to try and access them emotionally all the time. Do you have any sense of that? Do you think that rest is important, and it's something that's perhaps a bit undervalued in our iPhone, BlackBerry, go-getting culture?
Yeah, I think so.
BlackBerry, that's a bit generous of me. I mean, they're not going to be around for much longer.
I think this comes around, whether you want to go the Taoist route with the yin and yang thing, but our ability to receive impacts our ability to give, to create and put out there. And yes, of course, we get that, but then I personally am really challenged by this. This has been something in my life of learning how to receive, and not just receive in terms of rest, but also in terms of love, like praise. I'm really skillful at having people tell me really cool things, and I can just brush it off. I can be like, oh yeah, well that's really cool what you did too, and I have people in my life that are like, you just pushed it away.
Yeah.
I'm like,
praise, yeah.
Yeah, I just I did deflect it. And so the part of me that think what that is there's kind of like, I don't deserve to receive, or I don't deserve rest. Or if it's not that I don't deserve it, it's I don't believe things will be okay if I do rest. I don't trust that I can rest and still create momentum. I don't believe that I can rest and still maintain this or that. And so that inability to receive, or that inability to rest, I think is rooted in fear and scarcity. And I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. But when I've allowed myself to receive, and I allow myself to really be replenished, my gosh, I mean, just completely, it's night and day of what I'm able to put out there. But this small mind that just says, no, you have to keep going, you have to keep going. But I think this is where we spin our wheels without actually getting any traction. And when I feel that, when I feel like I'm creating from this frantic energy, I just stop. I'm just like, okay, stop. You're creating out of fear, you're creating out of scarcity, you're creating out of lack.
Yeah.
Stop it. It's not. That's
That's
not what we
sometimes the
want.
hardest thing, isn't it? Literally just to take that advice from yourself and just unplug or switch tracks or.
And some of us have only created from that place. We really haven't ever just had that thing and like, this is what I want to give, bam, and put it out there. But that learning what that feels like and setting my preferences for more of that. Okay, it doesn't have to come from fear. It can come from hard work. Okay, I know tomorrow I'm going to get up and write, but I trust. This is what it's about. So
Yeah, well, I remember the Dalai Lama saying that on his busy days that he prays for half an hour in the morning, and then on his very busy days, how long does he pray for? 15 minutes, 20 minutes? No, 1 hour, because it's like when you've got such a really busy day ahead of you, it's like even more important to be really clear about what is important and what you're going to put your energy and attention on, and then getting into that kind of reactive firefighting mode is I think it's just really important for people to know how to stop themselves in their tracks, because I don't think it's about not ever being there. I think with most of these things it's about noticing it when it comes, because it's probably just part of the deal.
Yeah, I like that.
So if people are digging you, I'm digging you, Tripp. If people are digging you, where should they go to find out more about what you're up to?
Well, the easiest and probably the most rewarding for people is just go to the newmanpodcast.com, or you can find the podcast by searching on iTunes.
Okay.
Just look up the New Man Podcast. There's 100 and
you've 125 plus now.
I think so. Yeah. So
congrats, man.
There's a lot of episodes. A lot of women listen to. It's a dirty secret. There's a lot of ladies that have infiltrated the treehouse, the clubhouse, but it's not just for dudes.
Yeah.
But I do talk for men. I do aim it and put it, but I do get women that are like, that was fantastic. So
yes.
But that's going to be rewarding. And then for people that want more than that and want to start to learn, like some of the conversations that we've had today about, okay, here's what I've learned as a coach, here's what I've learned as a podcast host, and I've created some products from there. The easiest place to go is the newmanual.com, and I've created an ebook and a video series that you can download there.
Cool, newmanual.com. And if people are interested in the New Man podcast, obviously we've done over 125 of them. I don't want you to name favorites, but if there were perhaps one or two that you think, that'd be a cool place to start, or even for someone who may not have such a kind of insider knowledge of the personal growth space and may not be able to distinguish some of the names that you've got on your roster there. Are there any that you would just single out? I don't want to get you in trouble, man.
I don't know. I really don't know. It always depends, because some guy will come to me for relationship stuff or some for that. But I have to say, I got to interview Tim Ferriss recently, and I was never, I liked the guy, but I was never a huge fan of his. But I've been amazed at how many people thought that interview was really valuable. So
yeah, I did. I listened.
Okay, cool.
I liked. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe start with it, because I think he's got something about him that helps people start to dive into this world, and maybe that conversation is the best place to start. So yeah, Tim Ferriss. We'll go with that one today.
Cool. Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together today. So is there anything that we haven't touched on, or any kind of closing comments, or even looking to the future of what you see as the potential for men on their mission, men in relationship?
This has been fun. I think that we nailed a lot of it. I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about how important it is for us as guys to take responsibility for ourselves. I see that our culture is really feeds upon finger pointing, and people want to. They ask me questions like, "What do you think about this? Women said this," and women, it's like feels like high school. Like, I don't think that we're victims. I don't think that guys are victims, and I don't think women are victims. I think that's a mindset that we've created, and we can choose. And so I've just really appreciated that we've had a chance today to talk about, okay, given that things are this way and they may suck, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to create? And then what can support you in that? Who are the people in your life that can support you? Do you need a coach? Do you need to join a men's group? Do you need to, whatever it is? But start thinking in those terms from what do I want and what are the next steps versus here's what's wrong with the world.
Yeah. Well, that's a great rally call, man, to help people think about what it is they really actually want, like their true desires, their soul desires, those deepest things, and being able to bring them out and express them. Thanks for spending time with me today. I've enjoyed our conversation, and very best of luck with your work. I hope we get to meet in person sometime. My name's Jack Butler. This is the Wisdom of the World show with guest Tripp Lanier. Thanks very much, Tripp.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Cool, man.
All right.
Thank
you. That was
you.
a lot of fun, man. You're very good. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
having me.
You're welcome. No, I enjoyed it. Thanks for finding the time, and yeah, go enjoy the water. It's just so interesting hearing you say that, because my girlfriend has spent a couple of years in California and is fairly keen to get back there, and we're sort of weighing up Boulder in the Bay Area, and she just loves being near the water, and obviously from here it's 2.5 hours flight, so yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. All right, my man. Well, good luck, and if you see Ross or Jenna or any of the other crew
I'll
around,
give him a squeeze.
I said hi.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Be well. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Oh, by the way, this is gonna this will probably go out in the last week of February. So I'll just send you a quick blurb with links to the relevant places, and if you can broadcast, that'll be cool.
Okay, great. We'll do.
Awesome.
Thank you, man.
All right. Cheers, man.